welcome to episode 15 of Merry Little Makes. I'm Mary, and if you're new here, thank you so much for joining me, and if you're returning, thank you for coming back to my corner of the internet. So I am a knitter and aspiring knitwear designer and all-around fibre enthusiast based in Bristol in the UK, and this is just a little space where I talk about knitting, talk about some other things that kind of intersect with knitting sometimes, and generally, just document a little bit of my making and designing journey. So it's been a while. I start every single podcast with it's been a while, but we're on episode 15, and as a person with, some neurospiciness, I'm pretty proud of that. 15 might not seem like a milestone to a lot of people who are really good at getting into consistent habits, but it's cool. It's great that I've managed to do this many. So that's a thing. This follows a pretty straightforward format. I'm going to be a bit rambly because I always leave such big gaps between recording that I forget how to do this. But I am slowly getting a little bit more confident in front of the camera than I used to be, so that's nice. So we're going to talk about whips, we're going to talk about finished objects, we're going to talk about some plans that I have and things that I'm really excited about, and then we usually have a little chatter segment at the end. So I will see how I feel when we get to that point, and if I have enough voice left, we'll do some chatter as well. So before we get into whips, let's do some finished objects, and I have a few to share with you. So probably fairly obvious, but the first finished object that I'm going to talk about is what I'm wearing, which is the Joyride jacket by Lydia Morrow, or she is also known as What Lydia Made on Instagram. And I did this as a test knit. I'll stand up a little bit so you can see. But yeah, I adore this thing. I knit it up unbelievably quickly. This may be the fastest garment I've ever made, and it's not just stocking it in the round or something like that, and it absolutely flew by. Her construction is very, very smart. I'm not going to talk too much about the construction or details of the pattern because it is a paid for pattern. Please keep an eye on a release date for it. I think it should be in the next month or two. But the construction is really, really smart. I have so many things to say about this. Where do I even begin? Oh my goodness. Okay, what did I make it in? Let's start there. So I was a test knitter. I made size 5 in the pattern, in case you're interested. And I also did the cup size 1 for the short row shaping in order to create bust darts. If you don't know what that means, basically, if you are a person who has boobs, or if you're a person who has a chest that goes out and then in again, which isn't just people who have boobs, then sometimes you need to create a little bit of extra fabric to accommodate for that because, funny enough, not flat in the front as we are in the back. So what that means is that you create, and designers have lots of different ways of doing this, but you create a little bit of extra fabric here. So this stripe in the front is bigger than it is in the back, and that's done through short rows, so going back and forth and basically just adding a little bit of extra fabric. So I did the cup size 1. There are 2 cup sizes, or you could not do any shaping at all. So yeah, size 5, cup size 1. That's the size that I made. I was pretty close to gauge. I think I was very slightly bigger, so I had to use very slightly smaller needles in order to hit gauge, but that actually worked out beautifully and I managed to hit gauge that way, so that was fine. It's a DK weight pattern. I knit mine up in 2 strands of fingering weight because I just happen to have a lot of fingering weight yarn, and so I made mine entirely in woolly net 100% British wool. If you haven't been to this channel before, you may not know I am a big fan of woolly knit. I make a lot of things using their yarn. It's really reasonable, it's incredibly good quality, it's really hard wearing. Everything I own that I have made in woolly knit has held up incredibly well. Some people do find it a bit scratchy, I will say that, so they do have a merino as well, which is slightly softer, but it's all non-superwash. The chemical treatment is very, very minimal. The colour range is really good, and you can buy it on a cone, which is much, much, much cheaper than buying it in individual skeins or cakes. So yeah, highly recommend Woolly Knit. They're fantastic. The colours I used were mustard, black, and neon lava orange, or lava neon orange. I always get it the wrong way around, but this is the colour that I made my traffic cone jumper in, that I wore a couple of episodes ago, or possibly last episode, I think. So this was some of the leftover. I still have plenty of that yarn left because I have cones of all of these colours. The original Joyride jacket design actually has 5 colours, so there should be more colour variation than I did in mine. I just decided to make it slightly less multicoloured because I knew that I would wear it more, and also in the original design, so I cropped mine a lot. I think I've talked about this before. I have a very short body. I cropped mine and I actually put a contrast hem, so I put a black hem, but there should be some intarsia shaping here. Not intarsia shaping, sorry, some intarsia patterning, so that you would have a kind of triangle of another colour to here and then a hemline on the bottom. I decided not to do that just because I knew that I would wear it more like this. I checked with Lydia beforehand. When I signed up for the test knit, I actually put in the notes, this is what I'm planning to do. I probably will omit the intarsia and make the body shorter. Are you happy with that? And she said yes, it's absolutely fine. So if you are ever planning to do a test knit and you see a design and think, wow, that's amazing, I really, really want to wear that thing, but there's a minor adjustment I would want to make in order to make it a wearable garment for myself, just check with the designer. Message them, say, hey, I'm looking at applying for this, but I'd really like to make a couple of changes. Would that be possible? And they might say no, and that's fine. I happen to know that Lydia is a designer who really cares about people being able to make modifications, so long as they're not kind of messing with the original numbers and grading and stuff, and so that they are testing the kind of main features of the pattern, which in this case was, you know, the shaping, the welts, which are, by the way, so much fun to do, a lot easier than they feel like they might be, which is really nice. I also really adore them on the sleeves. I just think it's such a fun little detail. And I love that I did mine in like a real pop of colour, so yeah, there is also welts across the back as well. Yeah, I know that Lydia is a designer who really cares about that. She always has amazing size range and a lot of really good fit options, and shaping options. So yeah, this pattern actually comes in, I think it's 11 sizes, but it's a lot of sizes. So the size that I made was bang in the middle of the range of sizes. So just to be clear, I'm quite often in non-size inclusive pattern land, I am often the top size or one of the top sizes in a pattern range. So the fact that I was in the middle for this one was really lovely. And so yeah, it's an incredibly size inclusive pattern, but not just size inclusive, it's also shape inclusive. So there are, like I said, 2 different cup sizes if you wanted to add bust darts, and there is also an option to do hip shaping, so you can actually flare it out from the waist outwards if you wanted to, or needed to do that for your own fit preferences. So I did the straight shaping, and I also cropped mine a little bit more, but you totally could. So yeah, that's Lydia's Joyride jacket. If you check out I think it's hashtag Joyride jacket at the moment, all one word. Joyride, like going for a motorcycle ride. It's inspired by like a moto jacket design, which it's really cool. It's really cool. She's so interesting and creative in the way that she approaches knitwear, and I just think it's cool and modern and fun. And yeah, I messed around with a few different colour combinations for this, and the way that I did that was I just traced over the outlines of the picture from Instagram, of her picture from Instagram, really, really loosely, and then just like coloured them in with different colours on my iPad. You could also just do it on your phone. A few people did that in the Slack group. They just kind of went, I'm thinking about this, and it was literally just like they just drawn over her original photo on their phones. So like there are lots of ways to test out the colours. She's really good about giving you all the different yardage that you need for each colour as well. Yeah, I love it. I have worn this thing so much already, and every time I wear it I get a compliment on it, and people are going, wow, that's so cool, where'd you get it from? Which is really nice. It's the first thing I've ever made that has a zip, so that's a cool thing. Lydia gives really good instructions on what kind of zip to buy as well. I think if I remember rightly, she actually bought the wrong kind and then went, "Don't do what I did," which is really nice. Yeah, so it's got like a proper full open and close zip, which is really fun. Never done that before. It was really easy to put in, honestly. I can't remember if I hand stitched it. Yeah, I think I did. Did I hand stitch? I think I did actually hand stitch the whole thing. I did think about doing it on my machine, but yeah, in the end I just had a bit more control to help it lay flat. And also I worry because knitwear is obviously incredibly stretchy, like even vertically it's quite stretchy, as well as obviously horizontally it's very stretchy. So I was a bit worried that if I tried to put it through my sewing machine, the zip has obviously got no stretch at all, like literally none, whereas the knitwear has quite a lot. And I was a bit worried if I tried to put it through my sewing machine that maybe I would stretch the knitwear while I was sewing without meaning to, and then it would be really like wrinkly, which I didn't want. So I hand sewed, which did take a little while, but I just sat in front of the TV for a bit and did it, and it was absolutely fine. Yes, so anyway, I'm thrilled with it. I'm contemplating making another one in a single colour, like in a neutral, which I think would be really lovely. And actually I think it would be quite like sophisticated if you made it in a monochrome colour. The only thing I would say about that though, if you are ever planning on making this and you think, oh yeah, I'd like to do a monochrome version, the only thing I'd say is that picking up these welts is super easy because of the fact that they're in a different colour. I think if they were in the same, it would be a little bit harder to do this part. Not impossible, but they might not be quite as clean. Because basically, I can do this. So you can see on the inside, you can see where the welts are, which means that when you're joining them back together on your final row, it's really easy because you just look for the orange stitch and that's the one that you go into. So yeah, that would be kind of one thing to just mention. The other thing I will say, which if I do make it again, I will definitely do this, is this pattern is worked almost entirely flat, apart from the sleeves, which are worked in the round. Now, I don't love working tons and tons of purl flat. I can do it. I did it. It was fine. But as soon as you have gotten to the body, there is absolutely no reason that you couldn't steek this if you wanted to. So if you are a person who really hates lots of very, very long rows of pearls, I will say this is a double folded, just come down here. So the cuffs and the hem are double folded. So this is stockinette on the inside as well. So you're going to knit double that amount and then fold it back on itself. And that is a lot of rows of purling. A few people commented on it in the Slack group as well, going, oh, I thought it was so close to the end, and then realised I've still got the hem to do, which is like 50 more rows. So that, if you're not someone who likes purling, that is a thing to just consider. So I actually think if I do this again, I would probably steek it. Obviously, if you're using superwash or non-natural fibres, that is a little bit harder to do, but it is still totally possible to do it. I only really knit in non-superwash and natural fibres, so that makes life a little bit easier for me. But yeah, I've never been afraid of steeking stuff, so I think I might try and make another version of this at some point and steek it, because I think it would be really fun. Yeah, I love it, absolutely love it. I have nothing but good things to say about it, honestly. And yeah, I knit it incredibly quickly. So there you go, that is finished object number 1. God, I've been talking for ages already, it feels like. Okay, let me take a little sip of my tea. It's spoopy season, so Skelly Boys must be out. Nearly spoopy season, right? Like 1st of October is Tuesday. Okay. So I have one more finished object to show you. So last time, I haven't watched the last episode for a long time, but I think I was showing you my spinning project, and I was spinning up that beautiful braid which had kind of teal and pale pink all the way through it, and the braid was gifted to me. And I made this lovely yarn, and I think I said that I had planned to knit a musselburgh hat, and I was going to, but in the end, I didn't have quite as much yarn as I thought that I might do. I knit it up slightly heavier, slightly thicker yarn than I meant for, which I didn't mind, but it meant that I just didn't have quite the yardage to do a muscle burst. So I decided to make a classic 2x2 rib hat instead. This is going to be packed up and sent off to Canada to Sarah very soon, but this is the final hat and I'm absolutely thrilled with it. I really like ribbed hats like this because they don't fall off your head, but they're also not so tight that they feel uncomfortable. They're very, very, very stretchy. There's a tiny bit of pooling just around here, but it's nothing super difficult. And in kind of from far away, it just looks like a sort of greeny grey, but up close, and again the camera might not pick this up, but it's actually got all this like pale pink and teal. Sorry, there's a big shadow on my camera, which is kind of annoying. Yeah, but it's just really, really pretty, and I think it's really good colour for Sarah as well, so I'm thrilled about that. I think this is BFL, Blueface Leicester. I think off the top of my head it might be Wensleydale, but I'm pretty sure that it's Blueface Leicester. I actually honestly can't remember. I have the tag from the fibre bat somewhere, but the fibre came from Woolen Witch, Steph of Woolen Witch, which is she's based in the southwest of England as well. She used to be based in Bristol. So this is like extra special because it's yarn that was gifted to me from Kat of Cat Weaver, used to be Heather and Hops, and Steph, who kind of put this amazing box of fibre together for me. And then I spun it up myself, and then I'm gifting it to Sarah, who's one of my favourite people. So yeah, it's just lots of specialness in a hat. So yeah, that is my second finished object. Obviously it's actually longer, and you can decide how much of a brim you want to have. I really like hats like this. They're very, very easy to wear, very easy to knit. If you saw my episodes a couple episodes ago, I think I talked about my Attack on Titan hat as well, which looks a bit camo. Once it was all knit up, it looks a little bit camo, but very similar, and it's exactly the same pattern that I used. So I cast on at the brim. I think I did 120 stitches for this one, something like that. Just make sure it's divisible by 4. That's all you need. And then in terms of the decreases at the top, did I do 5? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I did 5. Okay, so I must have done a weird number by accident for this one. And then I decided the way that I normally do it is make sure you have a number divisible by 4 and then add 8 to the end of it. And those 8 will be columns of 2 that will stay consistent all the way up. But in this case, I think I did 10. So you'll see that there are like some columns that come all the way into the center here. So there's this one that goes all the way up to the center, and there are actually 5 of those. So that means I did a multiple of 4 plus 10, which is also a thing you can do. Yeah, if anyone's interested at some point, I can talk a little bit more about how to work out like stitch counts and how to place your markers when you get to the decreases, but there are loads of really good tutorials for that kind of stuff. But yeah, improvised hat, very happy with it. It's hand spun, so it's not perfect. You know, there are inconsistencies in the yarn here and there. Like there are some bits that are a bit chunkier, but that's okay. That's part of the beauty of hand spun, I think. So there you go. Those are my 2 finished objects, and I'll have another sip of tea and let's talk about whips. Okay, so whips. I have more than I have right here, but I'm just going to talk about a few things here. So before I start showing you things, there are 2 whips that I want to talk about to hold myself accountable, because I want to finish them and they're just complicated, so I'm struggling to come back to them and pick. I don't reach for them because they're complex and my brain goes, oh, I'm going to need to like work out where I am. But I do need to finish them because they're both really cool and I want them so I can wear them. So there is the 7 p.m. tee, which I'm making a jumper, which I think I talked about last time, and I love it so much, so I am really trying to get back, but every time I come back to it I do like 2 rows and I'm like, man, that was effort. So it's going to take me a little while, but I'm I'm not too far away from joining the shoulders together, and then it will be in the round, which will be much easier. So fingers crossed. I'm telling you about it so that I can hopefully finish it before the next podcast. I mean, assuming I record within the next 6 months, then maybe I will have finished it. The other one is my Chained Oblivion cardigan, which I think I mentioned also last time, if not maybe the time before, which I'm doing in this really amazing royal blue. I love it. And again, it's just going very slowly. It's partly because I'm doing the sleeves 2 at a time, which means I've got both sleeves on a set of circular needles at once. And I used to knit all my socks this way, and I just find it really slow going now. It really kind of gets in the way. So I did think about splitting them into onto two separate needles, which I might do actually. I might just put one on hold, finish the other one, keep track of exactly how many repeats I've done. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. I feel like maybe that would make it go faster. But I am also worried that if I do that, is it going to change my gauge? So there's some things to think about. But yeah, I really, really, again, want that one finished because it's so beautiful, and I know that it's going to be a big, like, people are going to be like, wow, you made that? And it's designed by a good friend of mine, you know, all the good things. It's also woolly knit, again. So yeah, there are some really, those 2 projects I really, really want to get finished, but they're quite big. And I know I'll feel really good when I have finished them, but it's going to just take a little bit of application. I just need to make myself sit down and finish it. So I have 3 whips I want to talk about today. The first one is my bus project. So if you haven't been here before, I always have a project, usually in this bag or in another little project bag, that comes with me on the bus. I go to the office at least twice a week, and I usually get the bus at least into work, sometimes also home, or sometimes I walk home. And I always have a little project for the bus. So this yarn, oh my god, look at it. Oh, this yarn was gifted to me by Sarah of Sarah Kareen Knits. She's featuring a lot today. 2 years ago for our friend Monica's wedding. So we all went to Italy, and it was really special because our D&D group, almost everybody was able to get to Italy from multiple different continents, and we all met each other in person together for the first time. So that was super duper special. And Sarah, being Sarah, had bought everybody a yarny present that she thought was like, she put a lot of thought into each person and what they would care about. So with me, I got this amazing warm foresty green, of course, it's so stunning. And I had plans originally to put it into a jumper, but because I only had the one skein, I didn't want to try and do something with it and then run out, or I want to use all of this yarn. So I've decided I'm going to make a hat and mittens combo. I think this is BFL off the top of my head, but I can't remember. I will find out and put it in the show notes for you, but it's from a Canadian brand, and it's just stunning. Like, it's this amazing tonal green. And I am knitting a muscle burr. So let me pull this out. So if you haven't heard of the muscle burr pattern, it's one of the best, I think it's one of the best starter knitting patterns if you're happy to work on a smallish gauge, but you can also work on a big gauge. Yeah, I think it's one of the best beginner knitting patterns to do because it's almost entirely just stockinette in the round, and then at the end of it you have this incredible finished project that looks really, really cool. So the only part of it that's quite tricky is casting on, but Isolde Teague has actually released a video on how to do the cast on, and also I have cast on the beginnings for a lot of my friends and then gotten to the point where it's just in the round and gone here, and then they can just work on it. In theory, you're supposed to use like kind of a whole skein. I have quite a small head, so I have yet to make a version of this that uses a whole 100 grams of yarn, but this is where I'm at. So it looks crazy long for a hat. It's like, what? But the reason for that is that you basically knit a big tube with like a closure on each end. So you start here, increase, then get to the size that you want, and then you knit down. So this is then going to go inside. I usually do the cast on inside because that's usually the messier one than the decreases at the other end. So what I do to try and gauge how long I want it to be is once I've gotten to a decent length, I'll actually push this piece inside. So I'm a little over halfway. So the final hat will be something like that sort of length, and then this part will fold up to the brim. So the brim will actually be 4 layers of fabric, so this is double. So what I'm doing now is knitting the second half, and then I'll do decreases at the top, which will be exactly the same rate as the decreases on the other side. And then, yeah, you just push one end inside the other and have this beautiful double layered hat. It means there are 2 really good things about it. One is that it means you have the flat side of the stockinette is the bit that's against your head at all times. So if you know about how like knit fabric works, you've got normal kind of flat knitting here, and then the inside looks like this. So it's kind of bobbly, and this isn't bad. And if you have soft yarn, it really doesn't matter. And this is very soft, I will say. And a smaller gauge means that it's less bobbly as well, because each stitch is smaller. But it's really nice for hats to have the flat stockinette part against your forehead in particular. Or if you're making this for a boy, or if you're making this for someone with a shaved head. My dad is completely bald, has a shaved head, so I make him this hat quite a lot when I make him hats, because it means that it's completely smooth and flat on the inside of the hat as well as the outside, which is, you know, if you haven't got hair, that's important. So anyway, yeah, this is my bus project. I'll have it finished in a couple of weeks probably. I literally just work on it when it's on the bus, so it has taken me quite a long time because I don't kind of sit and just reach for it, but it's just plain stockinette. So I'll get, 5 or 10 rows done on the bus in the morning and then put it down until the next time I'm on the bus. But yeah, I really love it. And it's again very special because it's yarn from a good friend. So that's one of the things I really love about knitting, is that you get this opportunity to make stuff that holds memories of people. And that's, it's a big reason why I knit in the first place. So yeah, that's my muscle bear hat. I can't even tell you how many muscle bears I've made at this point. This is probably fifth or sixth one. I make them a lot, I gift them a lot as well, so I can't even keep track of the ones that I've made. But highly recommend it as a project if you've never knit one before. If you are a person who likes hats, or if you have friends and family who like hats, highly recommend. The one thing, obviously, as a gift knit, it is significantly longer than doing, say, a chunky, like this is much, much faster to do as a gift knit than the muscle bear, because with the muscle bear you're basically knitting the full length of the hat twice. So yeah, that's just something to consider, but I think it makes a really nice, really clean, finished hat in the end. Yeah, so love it, big fan, can recommend. Okay. I'm really annoyed that I can't remember the colourway or anything from that green yarn. I'm sure the yarn company name has Bear in it somewhere, but I will have put it on the screen for you. Okay. So, whip number 2, and this may be going into hibernation for a bit because it's a summer knit. If you follow me on Instagram, you might have already seen it. This is my little cute, one of my cute vintage knitting bags. My Chained Oblivion is in the other one. So I decided over the summer to test out knitting with some cotton. This is woolly knit again. This is the 100% cotton. I can't remember the colourway, but I will put it on the screen for you and put it in the show notes. So this is an idea I've had knocking around for a while. So this stitch pattern is the stitch pattern from my Little Wings socks. So if you didn't know, small plug, I have some sock patterns out in the world. Feel free to go and have a look at them. If you go to the show notes, they're available there. They're also available on Ravelry. So I had this idea to make a summer top for a long while. It used to be on my board, but I think I've taken it. Yeah, it's not on my board anymore, but I used to have a teeny tiny little version that I made kind of as a like a construction experiment to see if I could make something in this way. And so now I'm making a grown-up one. So this is the back. It's a little back panel. It looks incredibly short, but like I said, I have a very short body and I'm intending to make this kind of a crop top style for myself, but you could absolutely make it longer. But basically the way the construction works is that you cast on here, you knit a panel, you decrease towards the top. Let me take this string away. Decrease towards the top, so that you then just have this one line of stitches going up the middle. And then this piece, there will be an I-cord attached to that. And then you pick up each side. And so I'm basically currently knitting the side. When I get to the right length of that, then I'll start increasing on one side of that to come up to the middle, and it's all going to be knit sideways. Now there is a possibility that I'll decide to add a front panel that is also knit from the bottom up. I haven't decided yet, but this could also be the front if you wanted it to be. So I kind of like the idea that you could make it sort of reversible. And then, yeah, it looks a bit funny on top of this jacket, but you get the idea. So this is the panel, and then you're going to knit sideways out from each side. So this cotton is incredibly soft, which I really like. It's very small. Ooh, sorry, hit the microphone. It's very small, so I am knitting this up on, I want to say 3mm needles. So yeah, the stitch definition is really lovely, but it is quite small. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I will say cotton's tricky because it's a plant fibre, so it doesn't really block out. So, you know, every single stitch is just sort of the way that it's going to end up. I will block it at the end just to try and get everything to relax a little bit, but it's not going to make a huge amount of difference. But I think once it's on a body, it will look really nice. And yeah, I love this stitch pattern. It's really pretty. So yeah, that's a whip, but for now, I think I'm probably going to put it into hibernation for the winter. That being said, it would be a really comfy underlayer also in the winter, because cotton's a nice thing to have on as an underlayer in the winter as well. So maybe I will finish it. Who knows? Currently though, so final whip for today. Currently the thing that I am reaching for the most is this. Now, again, if you follow me on Instagram, you may have seen a story the other day where my dog found some yarn. Now, she's normally fantastic and she doesn't really go for my yarns, but she was just a bit bored. I left my craft room / study door open, and I had this yarn on the floor, which is quite rare. I don't tend to leave yarn on the floor. Anyway, so I have this beautiful unspun yarn from Wool and Twine, which I will show you. Oh, look at it. It's so lovely. I've talked about it before as an acquisition. I love it. I absolutely adore it. It's significantly, it just feels very different from Nutiden. So I have still got quite a lot of Nutiden in my stash. I don't buy from them anymore. I've talked about that before. But I love unspun yarns, and I love the garments that unspun yarns make. I have now 2 garments that I wear an awful lot. I have a tulip sweater in this sort of colour, which is made out of Nutiden. The tulip sweater is by Mandarin Knits, whose name escapes me right this second, whose actual real life name escapes me. But I really love that jumper. I wear it a lot. I don't, it's not my favourite neckline construction. And if I remember rightly, it doesn't have any short rows, and I feel like it could have used some short rows, but it was one of the first garments I made. I've worn it sort of to death. I love it, and I will wear it until it disintegrates. And then I also have a kind of jacket, like almost an outer layer jacket that I made also from Nutiden, which again, I love. Both of them were made with 2 strands, because I will say knitting Nutiden single-stranded, it is possible, but it's hard because Nutiden is quite fragile in comparison to this. Now, I bought this with the intention of using it double-stranded, and then I got it and was like, I don't need to. This single strand is absolutely fine to use by itself, but it is unspun, so it just comes apart. The cool part of that is it also goes back together again incredibly easily. So you just lay your 2 ends on top of each other. If you're doing this for somebody else, you might want some water. I'm just going to use spit because it's for me. So I lick my hand, rub it together, and magic. Can't even see where they were. So yeah, it's pretty sturdy. It's much more sturdy than Newton for sure. Now I will say every batch of Newton is different. They don't have permanent colourways or permanent fibre ratios and stuff, so I know every batch is slightly different, but I have 4 different colours of Newton, and I would say on balance they're all much more fragile than this one. So this is from Wool and Twine, which is Ulush, based in Germany, I think. And so yeah, that's what a whole cake looks like. And then I'll see if I can hold up this whole box, because otherwise I'll drop some. It's going to be a little bit rustly. This is what my dog did. Oh. So yeah, she got hold of a cake, a brand new, as yet unopened cake, and played with it. Unbeknownst to us, we were downstairs, we came upstairs, and this was all over the floor, all over the hallway. It was just everywhere. So it's also now covered in human hair and dog hair, which is great, which I'm just pulling out as I go. So I've been spending some time making that usable again. The good part is it goes back together really quickly, but obviously the frustrating part is because it's so easy to pull apart rather than just tangle, I have huge bits like this, which are just, you know, when I do kind of sort them, I'm going to have like 4 or 5 inch pieces. I mean, yeah, so that's a piece. So what I've been doing is just like lining them up, like pulling them out of here, lining them up on my leg, and then just attaching them together one by one until I've got a long enough string, and then winding the strings up into a ball. So I have managed to put like 3 or 4 of these together, and I will manage to like salvage the whole thing. It's just going to take some time. So I'm not even mad at her, honestly. She's got fantastic taste. I talk about Unspun quite a lot because it's not right for all projects, absolutely not. And I really like spun yarn as well for a whole bunch of things. But the reason that I like Unspun a lot is it's kind of it's like the least processed yarn really that you can get without just trying to knit directly from a sheep, which obviously doesn't really work. So yeah, I really enjoy it for that reason. I feel like you are making something that's it feels great for a number of reasons. The garments you make are incredibly lightweight. They hold warmth amazingly well. They're a little bit water resistant, which is kind of incredible. Yeah, it's a very specific look, but I really enjoy it, and I found them to be very hard wearing as well, and very easy to fix and mend. So with that in mind, I was just really keen on having another unspun basic garment. I've been knitting quite a lot of colours, big colourful things recently. I know there's a lot of black in this, but there is also a lot of colour, and that's fine, and I love it, and I'm really enjoying the fact that I'm kind of moving into a more colourful era of my life, because I have traditionally been a very like black and grey and neutrals person, which is also fine. But I was craving a neutral, so I bought that fantastic colourway, which is called Barley. Let me grab this chewed up tag. Yes, it's called Barley. And this is a blend of local breeds to Eula, so local German breeds such as Korberger, I'm going to say these horribly, Fuchschaft, Merino, and Bergschaft. So yeah, it's really soft, it's really lovely, and I am making just a simple raglan jumper. So this is the jumper. you'll see I've added a little, this is actually crocheted, that's Newton, a little crochet unspun square in the back. You can't see it on the outside of the jumper, that's just a label, I guess it's a facsimile of a label, so that it's easier for me to see which is the back and the front. But there are short rows in here, so you can see that the back of the neckline is quite significantly higher than the front, which is great. There's still a lifeline in here from when I put my sleeve stitches on hold. I tend to leave them in for a while I'm working on the sleeves, just to make sure that I'm happy with how the sleeve's going, and then if I need to I can rip back to here and the live stitches are still hanging out. But yeah, so this is where it's at. That is one cake. If you ignore this tiny bit of a sleeve, that's one cake of single-stranded wool and twine unspun. So it goes a long way. Yeah, I'm really, really happy with it. It's so soft and fluffy, and it's going to be really comfy. But it's not super thick because it's a single strand, so it's knitting up kind of similarly to a DK, I would say, in terms of gauge. Maybe even slightly, no, yeah, it's about a DK, gauge-wise. But it's nothing fancy. The raglan is just I think it's a 3-column raglan or 2-column raglan? My eyes. No, 2-column raglan. Yeah. So it's got 2 stitches. Again, stupid shadows everywhere. It's because it's getting really dark outside already, which is kind of annoying. Yeah, there you go. So you've got 2 consistent stitches down here, and then the increases or decreases depending on how you're constructing it down there. So yeah, that's my jumper, and I really like it. I've knit up this whole thing in like, I don't know, 3 or 4 days. Did some proper short rows. That was also a bit of an experiment just to see how short rows would go in unspun, and they are 100% fine. Not that I had any feeling they wouldn't be, but yeah. So I did short rows all the way to the front. So they are like right underneath this ribbing here. So there are, I think, 4 or 5 German short rows here. If you are someone who's going, what the heck are you talking about, then I highly recommend checking out JP Knits Things or Isolde from Isolde Teague on YouTube. They both talk incredibly well about sweater construction, shapes, the fact that our bodies are not the same size, all that kind of stuff. I found them both to be super, super helpful in improvising stuff. So that leads me nicely onto the chatter segment. And if you're not here for chatter, I'm going to be talking a little bit today about designing and making stuff for yourself. If that's not for you, then thank you so much for being here and checking out some of the things that I'm working on. And I will see you next time. And otherwise, grab yourself a drink and let's have a chat. So, one of the other things I love about unspun is that I can break the yarn, go and try it on, and then bring it back and not have to carry all my yarn around with me, which is lovely. There we go. Okay. So I wanted to just chat a little bit about improvising garments for yourself and kind of the power of making your own clothes, because I've been sewing a little bit recently as well, which I don't talk about much on here. Maybe I mean, if you're interested, let me know, and I can talk a bit about sewing as well. I did some quite cool projects over the summer. I sewed with silk for the first time, which was a bit scary. It was for my sister's wedding, and I needed to make a sari blouse to go underneath my sari, and yeah, I did that in silk, and it was really, really stressful, but I think I'm actually really proud of the job that I did. So I've been thinking a lot about making clothes and making garments, and versus buying them, like versus fast fashion, and I think there is a really underrated skill basic sewing skills. Now, I'm not suggesting everybody should go and learn how to sew their own clothes. Like, that's not a thing that you have to learn how to do at all, but it's worth noting that an awful lot of us talk about the fact that our mothers or our grandmothers have at least kind of basic mending and sewing skills, and a lot of our grandmothers had really quite impressive sewing skills. I happen to come from a family of makers. My mother is actually an amazing seamstress, and she was also a fantastic knitter when I was growing up. She doesn't knit so much these days, but she can still do it, and she crochets. So there is a my family have some pretty intense fibre roots, I guess you could say. My grandmother on my dad's side was the one who actually taught me how to knit. So I'm very lucky that I kind of picked up some of these skills. And as an adult, I think I really underestimated how few people actually understand basics about sewing. And I was talking to some friends at work recently, and they were both saying how they would love to just be able to like hem their trousers or mend a hole in a jumper, and those really kind of basic skills that would allow them to utilise their clothes for longer and love them for longer. And I just wanted to say that there are so many people now who are starting to put courses out, and obviously there are YouTube videos galore for anything that you want to do. And Kat Weaver is a fantastic kind of voice in this as well, but nothing is as complicated as you think it's going to be. So the trick is not to let anyone tell you that it's hard, and just to have a go, because the worst that can happen is it doesn't work. Like, you're not going to destroy anything. The good thing about needle and thread as well is that the vast majority of fabrics, with the possible exclusion of silk, you can knit, you can hand stitch a little row of stitches, and if it's not in the right place, you can just pull them out, and it makes, like, no one will ever know that you did that. It's a very undoable craft, especially when you're talking about making and mending, because often you're not cutting things, you're just sewing stuff up, and if the sewing didn't work, you undo it and try it again. So yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot. I have a particularly odd body ratio by Western standards in terms of my height. Like, I'm quite short, I'm only 5'2", but I have like regular sized legs, if that makes sense. I have averagely decently long legs, but I have a very, very short body, which means that almost all commercial tops and jumpers and stuff are too long and hit me at a strange place, which means they're not the most flattering. So I spent many years all buying kind of long line stuff so that I could wear it as a purposeful sort of tunic length. But the rest of the time, most of the tops that I have, they just don't really work. So it's been really nice that more cropped stuff has come back into fashion. But being able to make my own things has made me think differently about my own body, what I want things to look like, what I like on myself as well, like outside of Western beauty standards or whatever you want to call them. What do you like? What do you feel comfortable in? What materials do you really like? I personally freaking love wool, in case that wasn't obvious. But that isn't the case for everybody. So I just wanted to, I don't know, give you a bit of a pep talk and empower you and inspire you to say, if there is a thing that you've always wanted to learn to do, that is like a weird kind of old-timey crafty skill, go do it. Like, find a YouTube video, find a course somewhere, whatever, however works best for your brain. Just get some stuff and work it out. Some people really love that, where they don't want to be told how to do it, they just want to noodle about with it and figure it out. Like, whatever that looks like. And it could be cooking, it could be sewing, it could be making your own cleaning products, like whatever it is. There is an immense amount of joy and satisfaction to be found in not relying on big brand names to facilitate your life. I assume that the more that you are able to break away from some of that, I do feel like when you feel less reliant on the system isn't so kind of painful, because you can choose the bits that you engage with. And that is, I think a lot of us would like to engage with it less, but late stage capitalism. If you haven't been here before, we talk about politics a little bit on this channel as well, because everything is political and nobody is just a knitter or just a sewer or just a content creator. Like, we all have multifaceted lives. So yeah, I'm not again suggesting that everyone should go and live off grid in a shepherd's hut somewhere, because that isn't practical for 99.9% of us. But it's not about that. Like, the small steps you can take to loving the things that you own more and taking better care of them and taking better care of yourself without needing to rely on somebody else is an incredibly satisfying thing. And I think as an ambition, it's a greater thing to aspire to than I want loads of money so I can pay other people to do this for me, because yeah, money's not real. And I have found that the people who I know and have met in my life who are the quote unquote happiest, and again, happy is a whole thing, but it's more like the most contented and fulfilled people, are the ones who can do an awful lot of stuff for themselves. And that's not to say that they sell it and they're not like, that's not their job to do these things, but they have the ability to mend a hole in their clothes when it happens, or to change the shape of a garment to fit them better, or add pockets to something because female garments don't have pockets enough. And learning how to add pockets is an incredible skill to have, and it's super satisfying to be like, oh, I love this skirt, but I wish it had pockets. Well, now it does. Yeah, things like that can be super empowering. So I just wanted to have a little ramble and say that if it's something you're thinking about doing, go and investigate it. Like, the worst that can happen is you try it and you don't get on with it for whatever reason, but like, most of these things have incredibly low barriers to entry as well. Like, learning to sew, buy a needle and thread, it's like less than £3 or £4 to do that, and just have a go, or borrow some from somebody, better yet, and just have a go, because there's nothing to lose by trying these things. So I hope that was a I don't know, ramble into the ether, but I've really been thinking about it a lot lately. I know things are really difficult right now. I don't know if anyone else is feeling the whole, work genocide balance thing. It's hard to wrap your head around. There is a lot of terrible stuff happening. So please choose what you engage with and consume carefully, but don't shut yourself off entirely, because that is a thing that only the privileged can do. It's worth always reminding yourself that, like, the discomfort we might be feeling seeing some of these things is absolutely nothing like the discomfort of the people going through the things that we're seeing. So whatever you need to do to restore yourself to be able to share it and talk about it and fight against it. Next episode, I think I'm going to talk a little bit about self-care and what I believe self-care to mean, and some of the kind of strange connotations that have happened within the industry that is now self-care and well-being. But that's for another day. So for now, thank you so much for sitting here for whatever it is, an hour or so, and listening to me ramble away. Thank you for engaging with my projects and my little corner of the internet. And yeah, I hope you take care of yourself. And until I see you next time, as always, move slow and make things.